Welcome to Eagle Spire Gaming. I'm your host, Crown, and today is November 19th, and we are talking about part 4 in our Starter's Guide to Legions Imperialis, how to play your opponent's first game. And I want you to take special note on a particular word in that sentence, your opponent. You have the rulebook, you have access to reading it. You were probably building up an army before you play this game. You were collecting, painting, things like that. You have time and understanding of what's going on, and that is a very different experience than someone's first time playing a hobbying game like this. While we're going through this, I want you to keep in mind that some of these rules, while this guideline is going to help you with playing your first game, it is done to the extreme. I've gone into the extreme for simplification purposes because I want this guide to work for when you are setting up a table. Someone comes in through that door into the hobbying store. They see your setup and they say, "Wow, I don't know anything about any of this stuff, but I like the way your models look. I want to play this game." That's going to be different than someone who is coming over from playing 40K or 30K or some other tabletop war game. So without any further ado, let's get started and let's talk about first, what is Legions Imperialis? It is a tabletop war game. And you could even further extrapolate onto that it is a massive scale battles. It's epic scale, but it is much bigger battles. Whereas Warhammer 40K and 30K, at one point, I think used to be called skirmish games. The intent was, they're not a full army, battalions and legion, and companies. They're very small, but more recently, Kill Team is now labeled as a skirmish game. So I'm not quite sure what that makes 40K, but there are other skirmish games. There are other tabletop war games out there by other companies. War Machine, Star Wars Legion. There's one out now for. I wanted to say How to Train Your Dragon, Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice. They've got a game very similar, and they all kind of have their own quirks and mechanics to them. But at the end of the day, you have models, you have units that can move in 360 degrees. Sometimes there's limitations to that, like with Star Wars Armada. They can move, and you can then choose to assault or to shoot or to take defensive stances. Even role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder, and there's so many different RPGs, but they have a similar amount of rules and complexity to them that you don't see in games like Monopoly and Chutes and Ladders and Risk even, or Sorry or Trouble, games like that. Those don't really have the same kind of complexity. So if somebody says they play games, you need to first and foremost establish what kind of gaming experience they have. They play Risk every night with their friends. They have an idea of strategies and resource economy, but they don't have any idea on list building and setting up. This kind of game is completely different from that. You also might want to know what their knowledge of the setting is. If your opponent doesn't know anything about Warhammer itself, not the fantasy side, I'm using Warhammer to represent 30K and 40K in this context. It just gets annoying saying both of those. But if they don't know Warhammer, they don't know about Predators and Space Marines and Layman Russes and Baneblades and the super heavies for Space Marines are a little bit less obscure because they're not in 40K. But when you point in a general direction and you say those Layman Russes, they have no idea what that means. When you point and you say the missile launcher, Space Marines, they don't know what that is necessarily. And while you might have shown them in the beginning, hey, this is this, they may forget that. So that's something to keep in mind, that you might want to be more specific. You can't point from as far away. You're going to have to get a little bit closer. It may even just be better to say these guys are shooting those guys. I like to throw in those names from time to time, so that I'm trying, setting that foundation so that they learn it, but don't take 3 feet back and expect them to know what you're talking about necessarily. So when you're introducing somebody new to the hobby, you're introducing them to the hobby. They're not new to the hobby. They haven't started it yet. They're new. They're just new. You want them to have a good time playing this game, and you want to remember that they don't have similar experiences that you have coming over from some other game. That doesn't exist for them. It may not exist for them. Again, I'm gonna try to not bring this up any further, but you could be playing with your opponent's first game. They might know more. They might not be this exact for this scenario that I'm using, where they know nothing. They might know a bunch of stuff. They might be playing other games, but we're over here on the far end of things. They could be somewhere over here, and this is haven't played a game yet, and this is don't even know what the game is. All right, so they could be anywhere in between that, but we're setting this up for here. It still works for over here to some extent. Okay, pick and choose as you go, and I'm gonna ask a question of you all now, here and now. Think about it as I go through this, and comment below when you have a chance. But have you brought anybody new into this hobby or some other hobby? And along with that, how did that go? Did any of what we're talking about today help? Did you use any of that without even having seen the video? Or would this have helped? Do you think that would have helped? Is something not going to work? Did you try it and it fail? And the final question in regards to this is, how big is their army now? So we're going to talk about 3 different areas here. We're going to talk about the table, the terrain, and the tactics. And I've chosen those names for particular reasons that I will get to in each one. But first, we're going to talk about the table. And really, that is what you're putting on the table. When you're playing your opponent's first game, you do not want to be bringing out and dusting off your entire collection so that it can see the light of day again. You don't need to be bringing your 6,000 point list. You're going to, in fact, want to consider playing a much smaller game. 3,000 points is the recommended size. I see people mentioning things like 2,500 or even less for things like tournaments or for quicker gameplay. And we are going for quicker gameplay. I feel like the game is better balanced at 3,000 myself. But for someone's first game, where really you're just trying to... You're either teaching them these things, or for yourself, you're trying to get accustomed to those rules and get some play time without having too much to overwhelm you. You're going to want to play with a smaller game. Maybe even going down as small as 500 points or somewhere around there. I wouldn't really worry too much about what the points are, actually, though. I would just put some things down on the table and play with them. But if it starts to look like there's a lot of things on the table, maybe check and see what those numbers are and realize that you've got too much stuff and cut it back down and get somewhere closer to 500 or around there. While you're playing on a smaller table, you may also realize that you want to... while you're playing a smaller game, you may realize you want to play a smaller table too. Me and Crayola's first game, we played last Wednesday, Thursday. And we actually only did it on a 2x4. That worked very well for however many points we had. It kept things condensed and where we needed to be. And with her not having any experience about wargaming, she didn't need 4 more feet 3 more feet to the left to come up with this brilliant plan to flank me. Those units would have just been lost to the abyss and not had any time to do anything. So we played on a smaller board. We only used 1 objective, and we used very few units even. ideally, I would say, and this worked for us, that you should play the same faction. You're using your models already because your opponent doesn't have models. They're new to everything. They haven't been into a store, and telling them, hey, go grab something off the shelf, put it together real quick, and we can play a game. That's absurd. Don't do that. That's weird. I don't even know why I had to bring that up. That's not how you do things. So you're going to use your models, just kind of cut things in half and put them, and they get one side, you get the other. I'd even go so far as to say that you should mirror the armies. In a lot of beginner-friendly games, players are using the same thing, right? Risk comes to mind. There are no different kinds of units. Everyone's using the same kind of units, right? Card games, you're using the same deck. Beginner-friendly games, you have the same stuff, right? That way they can see how you use your things, and then they'll have a better idea on how to use their own things and stuff like that. If you're using Space Marines and they're using Solar Auxiliary, now you've got this weird setup where they see your Space Marines do something, and they want to do that with their Solar Auxiliary, but their Solar Auxiliary doesn't have that. They aren't capable of doing that. The missiles can't, they don't have an infantry unit that can go garrison something and then shoot missiles into another garrison. They have Sentinels that do that, but the Sentinels don't go into buildings. So use the same faction, but also use the same list. I would suggest the two starter factions, the two factions that come in the starter set. I would even suggest just splitting that down the middle. Not they have Space Marines and you have Solar Auxiliary. If you've built all of yours, I haven't yet, you can just give them half of the Space Marines and half the Solar Auxiliary while you have the other half. Things like the Predator Squadron, which comes in 3, you'll have to kick one of those to the side. But don't worry about the fact that you now have a detachment of 2 Layman Russes, which are supposed to be in a detachment of 4. We're going to scrap as many rules as we can to keep the game quicker. We don't need rules like transports. We don't need rules like flyers. We don't need rules for Titans. We don't need rules for Knights. All of those models, you get one new model added to your army, and it comes with a whole slew of rules. Save that for later. Just put it to the side. Infantry and tanks, those are perfect. There's a perfect way to start showing off the game. Tarantulas even, now there's a whole new set of rules that, there's a little bit of a gotcha moment. Just stick to the basics, stick to the fundamentals, stick to that starter set, maybe set the Titans to the side, or bring them in if you feel like they can handle it. A little bit up to you. So you don't need to worry about the formation setup, and you don't need to worry about the detachment setup. You just put the things together. Just put them in their groups. Kind of, here this 4-man unit here is Solar Auxiliaries. They shoot and they do this. That's what they do. Here is a couple of tanks. They are, they work together. This is just one tank because we're splitting that. It's easy that way. For a better example of this, just watch the battle report. It'll be out soon, and that'll give you an idea. We didn't really worry about too much of that stuff. Well, I guess I had the models for it, so I just did. But if you don't, that's fine. If you only have 4 Layman Russes, 2 for you, 2 for me. Let's go. You only got 2 Malcadors, 1 for you, 1 for me. Let's go. Same for the Sicarians, and same for the Predators. Predators just unfortunate because it's got 3. So with the models on the table now, set them up so that they are in their detachments. They're in what they're going to be running as. Those detachments don't need to be perfect. They don't, if you only have 6 Solar Auxiliary, I don't know why you'd only have 6. 3 for you, 3 for me, that's fine. But with them set up that way, show your opponent the order tokens and tell them what the order tokens do. And show them the detachments and give them a rough idea of what those do. You don't need to tell them all the rules exactly for, this one has Armor Bane and AP -2, and, tell them it's got a long gun and it's good at shooting tanks. I would keep those smaller tanks to, with only the 2 gun, with the main gun and a hull mount or a sponson. I would keep those focused towards tanks, anti-tanks, and your larger gun tanks that have the turret and the sponsons and the hull mount. I would have, you could go a mix of all tank, all anti-tank, or you can have tank and anti-infantry with it. I would, that way they've got something like, hey, why is this different? Why is Predator different than Sarkarian? Well, one's meant to shoot. One can kind of shoot everything. One can shoot only one thing, right? So just give them a rough idea of that, and maybe tell them the speeds and stuff too, but you're going to be reminding them what the speeds are as you go along anyway, because they're not going to remember this. They haven't sat down and read a rule book like you have. Next, we come to the terrain. The terrain is, you're now going to set up the table real quick. Just put some stuff down. If you had time ahead of time, if you knew that you were going to be playing this demo game, you got to the store early, or you're doing it at your house, set it up ahead of time, if you can, if able. Just kind of put some stuff in the middle, block some line of sight, have some alleys to move towards and take control of to shoot the opponents. But you're really, all you need is a little bit of places where you can hide it, kind of make it look a little bit, like there's options. Give them some options on where they can go. Have some places that units can move where they'll be out of line of sight. Don't set up. Don't have a lot of stuff for Demolisher. Don't have a lot of stuff for destroying buildings. Let's not even bring it into the first game, because your opponent is going to be now shooting a whole bunch of Demolisher into these buildings, trying to take out a 30-point unit so that they can get that kill. And you're adding a layer of complexity, and there's strategic purpose to blowing up a building, to bringing down a building, but they may not be ready for that. So don't present them that option, because they're going to spend a lot of time trying to blow that up. Maybe have a little bit of a choice for it. I used Baneblade. Baneblade automatically comes with it. Actually, I used the Hellhammer. Automatically came with that as an option, but I didn't even bring it up when I played against her. I did bring it up when I played against my son for the first time. He's 9. Of course, he was like, I'm just going to blow up the primary objective, and that's what I'm going to do. He spent the entire game trying to do it, and really, there wasn't enough stuff to do it. 500 points, it's not, you don't have a lot of stuff to blow up a building. Just leave it out. Just leave it out. It's another rule that we can trim out to keep the game moving smoothly. You don't need a lot of objectives. I already kind of hit on that. And finally, just deploy all of your stuff at once. Have your stuff deployed when they get there. And then they can kind of see, hey, this is how it looks. I've got all my stuff behind this first line, and I've given them these markers, these tokens, action orders. I've given them these activation orders, and I've got them set up like this, and I have my things in range like this, so I can do this and that. Oh, I missed this. If you're playing Space Marines, I just leave out the Legion rules, and yeah. If you're doing Solar Auxiliary, keep the distance thing maybe, but be a little forgiving on it. Yeah. So that way they can kind of see how it looks, set things up, and they get an idea of it. And you're giving them a small handy. You're handicapping yourself just a little bit, right? They know where you are, so they can counter deploy. You probably only had one formation anyway, so it was kind of going to end up that way anyway. It's not a huge deal. Just give it to them. If you lose the game, oh well, they had fun. And we come to tactics. And this is really less the tactics you're using in the game and more the way you're playing the game, right? Because again, remember, the primary thing, this is for fun. This is for them to experience it the first time. Have you ever, oh my goodness, I've seen horror stories for this, and I had it happen to me myself, actually. The first time I went to play Warhammer 40K, it was 3rd edition. It was in 2001. And I showed up, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was young. I was young. I didn't know how to do anything. I didn't have my army list built or anything. I had an army I had been putting together and painting and stuff, and it looked so bad. There were so many spots I hadn't painted. But my opponent was like, oh yeah, I'll help you out with that. Let's get you up to a 2,000 point list. I didn't have 2,000 points. I did not have 2,000 points. I had a whole bunch of tactical Marines that you could pay a lot of extra points to give a lot of upgrades back then. You could give your veteran sergeant, you could give the squad leader veteran honors, and that cost like 15 points and added a bunch. You could pay points for 1 point for each Marine to have frag grenades. So that's 10 extra points per squad. 2 points to give them all crack grenades. So that's 2 more points per squad. And let's upgrade your squad leader to have all the best weapons that he can have and all this stuff. And we just did that and I had this tiny little Space Marine force with all these extra things added to them that didn't really increase their performance, right? Because it wasn't focused for anything. And he had his tournament ready to go. I don't remember what faction he was playing. Maybe he was Orcs or something. I don't know. Maybe he was Guard. He might have been Space Wolves. I don't know. He was like a regular back then, but I didn't see him a lot after that. Shortly after, I don't know, he moved or something. No idea. He crushed me. I didn't stand a chance. It's amazing I'm still playing this stuff, right? I just loved it that much. But that was a horrible experience. I did not enjoy that. And I've seen other experiences where people are like they get a kick out of beating up the new guy, right? This isn't even a new guy. This is somebody that is using your stuff. Don't make them make an army list. Set up everything. You probably should have been able to pick that up from when it said, don't make them make an army list. Don't hand them the rule book and say, here you go, start putting things together until you have X points. Just hand them the models and say, this is what we're playing with, okay? Maybe even don't. A lot of beginner games, a lot of the like introduction games, Star Wars Armada and Star Wars X-Wing, they don't even talk about points until later. They're just like, here's one force and here's the other force, play against a friend, right? Just do that. That's so much more fun and then you start trying to like, oh, now it's points involved and I gotta buy upgrades and stuff, and it starts becoming a huge difference in balance and stuff, like, because there's a difference between knowing how to build a list and just like, oh, I've got these things. But all right. Tactics. It's about having fun, not winning. It's about your opponent having fun so that they want to keep playing, so that they want to come back and play again, so that they want to go buy the models or print them out or whatever they're doing, so that they come back to the store and they continue to play. And maybe they don't want to play this game anymore, but maybe they want to play some other game, right? About bringing people into the hobby. And the hobby's not always one game. The hobby is the hobby store, right? People play a lot of different things at the hobby store. So don't play super optimized. Don't be measuring everything and determining, if I move these guys right here, they'll be in the perfect distance to charge next turn, shoot this turn, but they won't be able to get shot at by anything except for right there, right? Don't worry about that. Just moving forward. Just moving forward, kind of do some stuff, all right? Take your shots, take your charges, do what you got to do, right? It's less a thing in Imperialis, but in like 40K, you can set it up so that you can charge from a blind spot where you can't be shot at, you can't be overwatched, or you used to be able to do that. Maybe you can't do that anymore. That's terrible. Don't do that kind of stuff. Don't have those gotcha moments where because you knew the rules better than they did, you were able to pull off something and there's nothing they can do against it. Don't do that. Don't throw the game either, right? Like, make an attempt at it, but don't run away with it. Don't, just have fun. If you feel like your opponent, you feel like you want to give your opponent a couple of handicaps, give them the first turn. Give them the first turn. Small little thing. They might get it anyway, but just give it to them. It's, you're playing a mirror matched army anyway. Like, what's the worst they're gonna do? They're gonna shoot away one of your units, half of your unit. Show them your orders. Show them your orders and what you plan to do. Flipping over orders is actually fairly time consuming. Just don't even have them flipped. Just start with them face up, and you save so much time there. They're probably not even going to look at them anyway to use that to determine what they're doing. Me and Crayola, she had hers flipped up the entire time just because that's what I was doing. I never once looked over to there and be like, ooh, I need to do this. Maybe I did, but I was just like, oh, well, I'm not changing my plan. I can't remember. It was a few days ago. Don't forget to keep them informed on what units can do and what they can survive. They may forget that Ogrins don't shoot. and they may try to give them first fire. Well, they're perfectly set up right now to do that. No, 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 no. You need to charge with those guys. Don't charge your tanks at my guys. They should be shooting the entire time. You may have to do that a little bit. Don't forget about it. And again, no gotchas. Don't go for any gotchas. In fact, if you forget to do something, if you forget that your guys had an extra there was an extra gun. Last cannon sponson has 2 shots. It's gone. Just forget about it. But if you forgot while it was their turn, definitely give them that back. If they forgot to shoot, like, oh wait, you forgot to shoot your thing, let them shoot that. Let them get that. It's not a tournament. If it keeps happening later on, after you've played a few games and stuff, then start to like, all right, we need to remember our rules and we need to be punished for when we forget them. Then worry about that. But not for our first game. Come on. All right. So that's the table terrain tactics. I've got a few more additional tips. Hopefully I didn't already mention them earlier, but minimum units I found worked very well. You don't need a 9-man unit of predators on both teams, because what's a 9-man unit of predators good at doing? Well, it will delete 1 detachment, or it will severely whittle down the opponent's large unit. But it'll make all of your small units kind of feel pillowy in whatever damage they can do. If you got a bunch of units of 4, it gives them a bunch of things to activate so they can have fun trying out different things. But you're not going to do huge damage to one unit. You're not going to wipe anything out right away unless they charge each other. Then things are going to get wiped out. It kind of makes things... It gives a little bit more back and forth, less alpha strikey feeling to it. Lets things kind of die over the course of a few turns. It'll stretch the game out a little bit, and it'll be fun. Give them something to fight for, Again, Flyers, Tarantulas, Knights, Titans, Transports, they all add new rules that you can save those for future games, Kind of go kind of based on release order, right? So originally you had the starter box, infantry, and the super heavy. Well, the Kratos isn't a super heavy, but you got the big tank for each faction, right? Just go with those. You can use the little tanks that are in the starter set too, but just go those 3 units, four different unit types, boxes, however you want to say. And avoid things that look alike. Sicarians kind of look a lot alike, so don't have like all 3 different kinds of Sicarians. Don't have, you don't really need the Velatari and the Ogryn. Just use Ogryn for your close combat guy. Give them a sampling of things. Infantry with guns, infantry with knives, tanks that shoot tanks that shoot infantry, and tanks. Tanks always shoot tanks. Give them the diversity and stuff, but don't be like, hey, here's a guy with a gun, and here's a guy with a slightly different gun that does this. For our game, we played it small enough where we only needed 1 commander, 1 HQ. And then I gave, I said, all right, well, since we got a couple of tanks, we'll also have a tank HQ, right? I didn't even bring up the master commander, master tactician, or anything. So just keep it simple, keep it like that. All right, so that's pretty much everything I had with this. Maybe I could have put it together better, but I think that worked out pretty well. I use this for playing against, I use these concepts for playing against Crayola. I did put a few extra things that maybe I didn't need to in that game to kind of make it interesting, kind of make it a little bit swingier, I guess. But I'm also kind of doing it for YouTube videos, so maybe, your methods may vary. And I've talked to some people that said that they've done like 1,500 point games, right? And they built 2 different lists for it. So there's definitely different ways to do it, but I think this is the extreme how to play with brand new anything, and it's simpler, and it got through pretty quick, all things said. I don't know how long it took other people to do those 1,500 point games, but we're going to be playing again, and we're going to keep, we'll expand upon the rules a little bit, we'll expand upon the army size, but so... Let me know how you like this. Let me know how it worked out for you. And I will see you all next time. Once again, I've been Crown. This has been Eagle Spire Gaming. Thanks for flying by.